open quorum. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I know we have a couple of folks with some timing issues today. So it's right at 12 noon. And I will call the meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability to order. I'm Bega Chairperson Norma Hutcheson, and the meeting is being held virtually via WebEx. Joining me today for this meeting are board members Charles Nottingham, Felice Smith, Darren Sobin has not appeared yet, and Melissa Tucker. Okay. Together, we constitute a quorum for this meeting. Okay. Since it was first posted, the only change to the meeting is the addition of item number 4, which is the approval of the 2024 meeting schedule. So I ask that you take a look at the agenda, and then we can have a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Great. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Hearing none, the agenda has been adopted for today. I also ask that you look at the draft minutes from the November 2nd meeting, and then we'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll offer the motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve the November 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the board approves the November 2nd meeting minutes. Next item on the agenda is approval of the 2024 schedule of meetings. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed schedule of meetings?
I'll offer the motion that we approve the proposed schedule of meetings for the new year.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, sounds like we have 2 seconds. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the board has adopted the 2024 schedule of meetings. Next, we'll hear from the Office of Open Government. Niquelle Allen is the Director of the Office of Open Government, will provide a report on behalf of the office, and she's appearing virtually via WebEx. Director Allen, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Hutcheson. I'm pleased to present my report. One moment here. Good afternoon, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Niquelle Allen, Director of Open Government, and I am pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Open Government. Since the last board meeting, OOG has continued to fulfill its mission of ensuring that all persons receive full and complete information regarding the affairs of the District of Columbia government and the actions of those who represent them. I'll start with Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act advice rendered by the office. The first item is advisory opinions. I have not issued an advisory opinion since the last board meeting. The second item is Informal Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act advice. Since the last board meeting, OOG has responded informally via email or telephone to requests for assistance as follows. OOG responded to 12 requests for OMA advice. OOG responded to 9 requests for Freedom of Information Act advice. And OOG responded to 9 requests for technical assistance with open-dc.gov. The next item is remote meeting monitoring. OOG attorneys attend remote public meetings to ensure compliance with the Open Meetings Act and inspect public body websites and OOG's central meeting calendar for public meeting notices and records. We provide legal advice on Open Meetings Act compliance and take corrective action if necessary. During November 2023, OOG's legal staff attended 22 remote public body meetings. As a result of the monitoring, 5 instances of corrective measures were communicated. The public bodies failed to do the following: 1, post meeting agendas; 2, provide meeting links on agendas; 3, cite the Open Meetings Act regulatory statement; and 4, improperly insisted on attendees identifying themselves. The next items are training and outreach. The first is paralegal, legal writing skills to boost your career. On November 9th, 2023, paralegal specialist Kimberly Brown attended the Practicing Law Institute's Paralegal Legal Writing Skills to Boost Your Career training. The training providing an overview of the power of citations and how they relate to the substance of content. The session included the best practices and common mistakes in legal writing, as well as methods on how to build workflow to ensure accuracy through site checking. The next item is confidentiality for paralegals. On November 8th, 2023, paralegal specialist Brown attended PLI's Confidentiality for Paralegals training. The online discussion featured a PLA faculty presentation, a video, and illustrations to demonstrate key concepts in client confidentiality, privilege, and privacy. Paralegal professionals becoming an effective communicator. On November 8th, paralegal Brown also attended PLA's Paralegal Professionals Becoming an Effective Communicator training. The session provided tips on navigating ethical communication issues and best practices for productive lines of communications inside and outside of an organization. Paralegal Brown also attended on November 7th PLI's Understanding Legal Citations training. The training provided basic principles and practical tips on Blue Book citation. The session provided insight into the components of legal citations, identifying various types of sources and citation formats. Next is Finding the Law of the District of Columbia. On November 13th, 2023, attorney advisor Anthony J. Skirbo and paralegal Brown attended OAG's Finding the Law of the District. This 1.5-hour talk by James McKay, Senior Assistant Attorney General for the Office of the Solicitor General and author of the first chapter of the D.C. Bar's District of Columbia Practice Manual entitled Finding the Law of the District, explained the various types of laws pertaining to the District of Columbia unique political entity. It included legislative enactments and resolutions, both by the Council and Congress, judicial decisions and rules of the court, both local and federal, and executive actions, both district and federal, including agency decisions. The next training is cross-examination skills. On November 14th, 2023, attorney advisor Cherie DeBerry and paralegal specialist Brown attended the cross-examination skills training presented by OAG. The training discussed preparing and executing cross-examination and impeachment skills. The training also covered the nuts and bolts of the chapter method of cross-examination and offered practical tips to maximize effect. OAG opening statements. On November 28, 2023, attorneys Skirbo and DeBerry attended OAG's opening statements training. The training was facilitated by Deborah Sines, formerly of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and covered the do's and don'ts of opening statements, how to prepare for them, including why you should or should not waive them, and the importance of the opening statement. The first opportunity to tell the trier of fact what the case is all about. It emphasized that the effective and forceful opening statement will persuade the fact finder to find favorably even before you begin presenting evidence. OMA training for LSATs. On November 30th, 2023, Attorney Skirbo facilitated an Open Meetings Act training for a local school advisory team's chairpersons. The training provided basic instruction on the Open Meetings Act and provided an open opportunity for question and answer session after the presentations. OOG's legal staff also attended the training. OAG closing arguments. On November 30th, 2023, Attorneys Skirbo and DeBerry attended OAG's closing statements training. The training was facilitated by Glenn Kirshner, formerly Chief of Homicide within the U.S. Attorney's Office, which covered how to prepare and deliver a powerful and persuasive closing argument, how to structure and organize a summation, and how to marshal evidence and rebut the opposition's case. The next item is the 45th Annual Council on Government Ethics Laws, or COGL, Conference. From December 3rd to 6th, OOG staff attended COGL's 44th Annual Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. The conference included plenary, educational, and professional development sessions that focused on elections, campaign finance enforcement, government ethics, and multidisciplinary topics, lobbying, and freedom of information. OOG team members attended the following sessions. The first session is the First Timers Conference preview. On December 3rd, 2023, Attorneys Skirbo and DeBerry attended the First Timers and Conference preview. The session provided an overview of the COGL conference and introduced the conference topic categories. Come together, legislative change, we can work it out. On December 3rd, I attended this session. It was moderated by the Manager of Communications and Outreach at the Office of Integrity Commissioners of Ontario. This discussion highlighted how other agencies have successfully tackled the challenge of achieving legislative change. Embracing Innovation, Top 10 Training Upgrades for Ethics Commissioners by Ethics Commissions. On December 3rd, trial attorney Nicholas Weil and attorneys Skirbo and DeBerry attended Embracing Innovation, the Top 10 Training Upgrades for Ethics Commissioners. Our director, Cooks, was on this panel, and the session featured different panelists from state and local ethics commissions from across the U.S., and it was unveiling the campaign's legal center's latest edition of its Top 10 report. Enforcement Update 2023, Trends, Challenges, and Charges in Enforcement and Investigations. On December 3rd, I, along with attorneys Weil and Skirbo, attended Enforcement Updates 2023. This session examined trends and emerging developments in investigation enforcement actions across all levels of government. Elevate Your E-Learning and Effective E-Tools. On December 3rd, Attorney DeBerry attended this session, which discussed reevaluating training platforms to consider making a change based on better technology, pricing, or need. The next plenary session was 5-3 General and Insider's Perspective on Power and Influence. This was on December 4th. It featured Heather Frost, a former White House public engagement advisor to President Obama and current head of public policy for Lyft. She candidly shared her leadership journey, how she's challenged stereotypes and thoughts on the possession of power. I, along with attorney Weil Skirbo and paralegal specialist Brown, attended this plenary session. Hot Topics and Freedom of Information. On December 4th, panelists presented an overview of emerging hot topics in freedom of information. I attended this training along with attorneys DeBerry and Skirbo. Preparing the Case 1 and 2, Best Practices in Writing Complaints, Gathering Evidence, Interviewing Witnesses, and Drafting Settlement Agreements. This occurred on December 4th, and attorney Weil and paralegal specialist Brown attended this session, which provided interactive tips on how to effectively execute fundamental aspects of enforcement, and it highlighted best practices in enforcement, covered proper procedure, legal standards, discovery, settlements, and hearings. The next training was a first-person perspective on U.S. democracy, elections, and threats to voting access from a veteran and former Missouri Secretary of State, which is another plenary session, which was I'm not sure what I think someone's mic was on. This was another session on December 4th. And this was attended by myself, Attorney DeBerry, Attorney Weil, and paralegal specialist Brown, and he shared his personal account. He's a veteran and former politician. He championed voter access and campaigning against voter suppression. The next session was a fight for access to public records, an insider's view of how major news stories come to light. This was on December 4th as well. It was a panel of journalists who discussed the importance of open records laws and challenges encountered when gathering information for the public. I, along with the attorneys DeBerry, Skirbo, and paralegal specialist Brown, attended this session. And next was Cutting Through the Noise, Best Practices and Freedom of Information Compliance. This was on December 4th, and panelists shared knowledge, experience, and resources to help attendees improve best practices and freedom of information compliance. I, along with attorneys DeBerry and Skirbo, attended this session. Next was Quotes, Deadlines, and News Cycles, Political News and Powerful Players, and this was on December 5th. Missouri journalists facilitated a discussion on story development, the search for truth, and shining light on government politics. Attorney Wild, DeBerry, Skirbo, and paralegal specialist Brown attended this session. The next one was Catch and Release, a discussion on early intervention and compliance effort. On December 5th, facilitators presented tools and techniques used to catch and correct a problem before enforcement is needed. I, along with attorneys Wild, Skirbo, and paralegal specialist Brown, attended this session. Next is Pursuing Political Transparency and Furtherance of the First Amendment, Tip from the Trenches. On December 5th, attorneys DeBerry attended this training, and the panel presented topics included the scope of constitutional support for campaign finance transparency laws, legislative and regulatory approaches that ensure campaign finance systems are transparent, and raised arguments that challenge and defend these laws. A Freedom of Information Legislation and Litigation Update. This occurred on December 5th, and I, along with attorneys Wild, DeBerry, and Skirbo, attended this session, and it explored the latest developments from the past year in freedom of information. Used this space in acting workshop for COGL professionals. Paralegal specialist Brown participated in theater exercises exploring how to execute a presentation through the lens of performance using tools as presence, composition, timing, and expressivity on December 5th. On December 6th, I, along with attorneys Wild and Skirbo, attended the FOI Roundtable, and this was an interactive discussion about emerging government access issues. Small fish, big fish, owning the pond, building effective enforcement strategies occurred on December 6, 2023, and this panel was talking about how to develop a principled framework for imposing penalties and how to enforce the law with consistency. And I attended this session along with paralegal Brown. Deconstructing Ethics, Where We Have Been and Where We're Going, occurred on December 6th. And this CLE education session was attended by attorneys Wild and Skirbo and provided methods on how to deconstruct ethical issues. Unlocking the Power of Data and Generative AI, Transforming Analysis to Maximize Communication and Problem Solving. On December 6th, Attorney DeBerry attended a panel discussion on how data analytics is reshaping organizations in fields such as ethics and how to embrace technologies for intelligent decision-making, avoid common pitfalls, and maximize value in individual organizations. Flipping the script on diversity, equity, and inclusion. On December 6, 2023, moderators discussed the challenges of creating a work environment where people have the chance to contribute equally and bring their authentic self. This session also highlighted the importance of conscious communication. Attorney DeBerry attended this session. Next, I will discuss the litigation and legislative update. And first is litigation. The first case is Qatari versus the Board of Trustees of the University of District of Columbia, which is case number 20 CV0248, which is in the DC Court of Appeals, and 2019 CA 004978B, which is in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. In this case, the requester had sought a copy of the DC Department of Human Resources, or DCHR, investigative report commissioned by the University of District of Columbia in relation to the requester's claim that UDC retaliated against him in violation of its anti-discrimination policy. UDC denied the request on the basis of DC FOIA exemptions 2, 3C, E, and 4 concerning privacy, disclosure of investigative techniques and procedures, and deliberative process privilege, though the plaintiff appears to have abandoned the privacy argument in his motion for summary judgment. The D.C. Court of Appeals handed down its opinion on October 2nd, 2023, affirming the Superior Court summary judgment in favor of the UDC Board. To qualify for exemption under the deliberative process privilege codified in D.C. Official Code Section 2-534A4, a record must be both pre-decisional and deliberative means that it reflects the give and take of the consultative process. The requester had argued that the give and take element was absent because after DCHR was asked by UDC to conduct an investigation of the complaint filed by the plaintiff, there was no other communication between UDC and DCHR before the report's delivery. However, the court held the give and take prong does not necessarily mean a back and forth dialogue, but merely that the record was a contribution to a broader discussion with the agency. The full opinion and most material documents are in Dropbox. Zinman versus the District of Columbia, case number 21-CV0894, the DC Court of Appeals, 2021 CA 00075-B, Superior Court of the District of Columbia. On January 17, 2024 at 10 a.m., a division of the DC Court of Appeals will hold oral arguments in a case involving body-worn camera footage, or BWC. On January 22, 2021, Corey Zinman of Florida requested copies of the footage recorded by body-worn cameras during an investigation of an incident in which Zinman was involved on January 19, 2021, and certain body-worn camera surveillance footage from an interaction between Zinman and the Metropolitan Police Department, or MPD, on January 20, 2021. MPD denied the body-worn camera request on the basis of DC FOIA Exemption 3A, interference with an ongoing investigation by the Office of Police Complaints, and the surveillance footage request on the basis of no such records existing. Zinman sued in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia and the district prevailed, and Zinman appealed. The substantive documents from the record, including the appellate briefs, are in Dropbox. The next case is DC Open Government Coalition versus the District of Columbia, which is case number 2023-CAB-007251 in DC Superior Court. In a lawsuit filed on Wednesday, November 29, 2023 in DC Superior Court by the Public Justice Advocacy Clinic at the George Washington University Law School, the DC Open Government Coalition asserts that the DC government is violating the city's open records law, the DC Freedom of Information Act, and DC Code Section 2-531 through 539 by withholding data that would answer the coalition's requests, provide a basic count of public records requests, those received but not closed, which the coalition asserts had a backlog at one point reached 3,000 during the pandemic. They further assert that the Office of the Chief Technology Officer has rebuffed the requests 3 times over 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The initial scheduling conference is set for March 1st, 2024 at 10 a.m. OOG staff will monitor the case. The complaint, as well as the coalition's blog post and press release, are in Dropbox. The next case is Gooch versus District of Columbia, the Metropolitan Police Department. It's case number 2023-2404, which is in DC Superior Court. On April 19, 2023, the requester plaintiff sued the district for records related to his conviction. He had previously partly redacted records. Due to difficulties in communication with the requester plaintiff, who was incarcerated, the Superior Court granted several extensions, but the cross motions for summary judgment have now been filed and are in Dropbox. The district argues that the redactions were correct application of DC FOIA's privacy exemptions and an other law exemption, namely the Driver Privacy Protection Amendment Act of 2012, the prohibition on release and use of certain personal information from motor vehicle records and accident reports. An initial scheduling conference is set for January 26, 2024, and OOG staff will continue to monitor this case. Washington Post lawsuits regarding records related to the Capitol breach is the next case. Case number 2023-24 3CV-0488 in the Court of Appeals in 2021 CA002114B in DC Superior Court. As I have previously reported, the Washington Post sued the district under DC FOIA for certain records related to the Capitol insurrection. The Superior Court granted the district's motion for summary judgment, and the Post appealed. The Post's opening brief is in Dropbox. The Post argues, 1, due to the variation among 911 calls received on January 6, 2021, the district cannot categorically withhold all 911 call recordings, but must conduct an individualized assessment, withholding only those recordings that relate to pending or prospective investigations and releasing those recordings that relate solely to closed investigations. 2, any privacy interest in withholding Officer Brian Sicknick's autopsy report would be outweighed by the public interest in understanding and reconciling the various statements that public officials have made. And 3, the district failed to show that it had conducted an adequate search for any WhatsApp messages that Mayor Bowser sent from January 5th through 8th, 2021. OOG staff will also continue to monitor this case. Next is Washington Post lawsuit regarding police officer disciplinary records, which is case number 2023 CAB000951 in DC Superior Court. As I have also previously reported, the Washington Post also sued the District of Columbia following the Metropolitan Police Department's denial of reporters' requests for certain disciplinary records. The Post won summary judgment, but the parties remain in a fee dispute. On December 6th, the parties settled, with the district paying attorney's fees to the Post. The stipulation of dismissal is in Dropbox. Chicago Justice Project, CJP, FOIA lawsuit against the district regarding gang database opposing fee demands, case number 2022 CA001175B in DC Superior Court. This is an update on CJP's suit to compel MPD to release certain records concerning the gang tracking and analysis system. As I have reported, the parties were engaged in a dispute between an advance fee that MPD demanded for a FOIA review and a similar amount that CJP demanded in attorney's fees. The parties have reached an agreement and will likely resolve all claims. The joint motion for a stay is in Dropbox. City of Tallahassee, Florida versus the Florida Police Benevolent Association Incorporated et al., Supreme Court of Florida, number SC 2021-0651, November 30th, 2023. The Supreme Court of Florida recently held that officers in a separate lethal force incidents could not rely on a Florida constitutional amendment that, among other things, protects the right of crime victims to prevent the release of their identities by the municipality. The Florida Supreme Court stated, this case arises from two related but contemporaneous episodes in which a Tallahassee police officer asserting self-defense used lethal force in detaining a suspect. Each officer invoked protections of Article 1, Section 16BE of the Florida Constitution, an amendment adopted by Florida voters that is colloquially known as Marsy's Law. The amendment enumerates certain rights of crime victims to achieve justice, ensure a meaningful role throughout the criminal and juvenile justice systems for crime victims, and ensure that a crime victim's rights and interests are respected and protected by the law in a manner no less vigorous than protections afforded to the criminal defendants and juvenile delinquents. Article 1 of Section 16 of the Florida Constitution is cited. The City of South Tallahassee proposed to release two officers' names to the public. The Florida Police Benevolent Association sought an emergency injunction to prevent that from happening. The trial court decided not to issue that injunction, and the Florida Benevolent Association appealed. The trial court's order requiring the disclosure of the officer's name was stayed pending appeal. The dispute ultimately made its way to the Supreme Court of Florida. To determine whether the officer's name can release, the court was asked three questions. First, can the police officer acting in the physical capacity be Marsy's Law victim? Second, does Marsy's Law require the commencement of a criminal proceeding to take effect? And third, does Marsy's Law contain a right for victims to remain anonymous? One, the court has jurisdiction because the First District's Court of Appeal decision was below in the Florida Police Benevolent Association versus City of Tallahassee and the provisions of the Florida Constitution. They only needed to resolve the question in the case that Marcy's Law guarantees to no victim, police officer, otherwise the categorical right to withhold his or her name from disclosure. No right is enumerated in the text of the article of the Florida Constitution, nor as a matter of structure would the right readily fit within the other two guarantees contained in the article. The right expressed in Section 16 of the criminally accused to confront at trial adverse witnesses, and the right found in Section 24A of every person to inspect or copy public records. The court decided only what Marcy's Law says and does not say. The court did not pass upon the validity of any statutory right of certain persons in certain situations to withhold their identities from disclosure. And this case is relevant, as you will see later in my report, due to the legislation we have before us in the district, due to police officers' right to have their identities remain private. So the next section is legislation. The Health Occupations Revision General Amendment Act of 2023, Bill 25-0545. As I have reported, this measure would provide that all medical records, orders for fitness to practice evaluations, or other types of physical and mental evaluations, and the resulting report shall be exempt from disclosure under FOIA. The DC Council's Health Committee held a hearing on this bill on December 7th, but the FOIA language was not discussed. Addressing Crime Trends Act, now amendment of 2023, Bill 25-0555. Title 7 of this bill would amend DC FOIA Section 204D1, DC Official Code Section 2-531D1 concerning broader disclosure of law enforcement disciplinary records by narrowing it to apply only to disciplinary actions that resulted in a penalty of suspension, demotion, or termination. The current subsection, though delayed pending appropriation, would have prohibited exemption of certain records, whether or not the outcome was adverse to the officer. I provided written comments on the bill. In my comments, I stress that DC officers' faces and badge numbers should not be redacted under the FOIA privacy exemption, that the committee should reject the categorical exclusion for police disciplinary records, and that body-worn camera footage should not be used to draft police reports, and where it is used, the police report should note it on the report. The bill as introduced is in Dropbox. The pertinent language begins at the top of page 10. A copy of my comments for the record is also in Dropbox. The last item on my report are administrative matters. Bega moved out of its old facility at 441 4th Street Northwest and into its new offices at 1030 15th Street Northwest on November 9th, 2023. Bega's first day in the office to view the new space and unpack was on November 20th, and as of December 11th, Bega is now working out of its new facility. Since the last board meeting, I, along with Director Cooks and Chief of Staff Mitchell and IT Specialist Brown, have continued to meet with the Department of General Services and its contractors regarding Bega's new facility at 1030 15th Street Northwest. We continue to close out outstanding matters with the construction team and acceptance of the facility and installation of the technology in the building. And these meetings will continue weekly until the end of the calendar year. And lastly, on November 20th, 2023, Bega met with the Executive Office of the Mayor to discuss the proposed FY25 budget. Bega requested additional funds to cover costs of living increases and step increases that are expected in FY25. The agency also requested funds for an additional FTE OOG attorney to handle educational entities and enforcement of the Open Meetings Act. This concludes the Office of Open Government's December 14th, 2023 report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Okay. Are there any questions for Director Allen?
Director Allen, this is Chip Nottingham here. I just wanted to thank you for keeping us apprised of the ongoing Washington Post litigation regarding the WhatsApp messaging and the request to release at least part of the referenced autopsy. I think there's some important issues there. I appreciate you keeping us apprised of that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. I also appreciate your comprehensive update, and thank you for keeping us in the loop on these cases. I think you called the Corey one, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I thought that was particularly interesting because usually courts have found that give and take in that deliberative context means exactly that. So I thought this was really unusual, but interesting that this court is saying that's not the case. It's just as long as it's part of a broader discussion. So I thank you in particular for bringing that to our attention.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you, Director Allen. Next, also via WebEx, we will hear from Director of the Office of Government Ethics, Ashley Cooks. Director Cooks, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I'm Ashley Cooks, the Director of Government Ethics. I'm pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Government Ethics, OGE. First is an update on the status of OGE operations. The information reported today regarding OGE's cases will not reflect any status changes that may occur because of actions taken by the board during today's meeting. For open investigations by status, we have a grand total of 29 matters. For open undocketed matters, we have a grand total of 3. Pending state investigations by status, we have 36 matters that are closed pending collection. 3 matters stayed pending DC Superior Court case. 1 matter stayed for OAG False Claims Act case. 5 matters stayed for OIG investigation. And there are no matters stayed for U.S. District Court case for a grand total of 45. For regulatory matters by status, we have 27 matters that are closed pending collection, 34 matters that are open for a grand total of 63. Again, we currently have 29 open investigations and 9 matters that are stayed. The number of open preliminary and formal investigations includes 9 new matters. The investigative team resolved 13 investigations since the board last met. This total does not reflect the number of complaints that were dismissed for a lack of jurisdiction. OGE published its quarterly complaint summary report for the 4th quarter of fiscal year 2023 on November 8th. The report and related press release are in the Dropbox for your review. Pursuant to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Delinquent Debt Recovery Amendment Act of 2022, Bega may discretionarily transfer delinquent debts associated with settlements and judgments for Ethics and Open Meeting Act violations to the Office of the Chief Financial Officer's Central Collection Unit, CCU, for collection. The Act requires that funds collected on Bega's behalf be deposited into the Ethics Fund or OMA Fund. OGE received a fully executed memorandum of agreement for debt collection services with the CCU in October. Since that time, approximately 76% of OGE's closed pending collection cases were referred for collections. We will continue to send over cases that are delinquent over 90 days on a rolling basis. Next is an update on training and outreach. First, professional development trainings attended by staff. Last week, from December 3rd through the 6th, the legal team, along with board member Tucker and the OOG staff, attended the annual conference for the Council on Governmental Ethics Laws, COGL, in Kansas City, Missouri. On Sunday, December 3rd, I presented on a panel entitled Embracing Innovation, Top 10 Training Upgrades for Ethics Commissions by Ethics Commissions. The panel was hosted by Delaney Marsco, Senior Legal Counsel of Ethics at the Campaign Legal Center, CLC, and also included Kedrick Payne, Vice President, General Counsel, and Senior Director of Ethics at CLC, and Alex Kipp, Director of Education and Engagement at the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board. The premise of the panel discussion was that the CLC unveiled its annual Ethics Commission's report entitled Top 10 Training Upgrades, which resulted from research and interviews with state and local ethics commissions across the United States. The report features commissions that have adopted education and training upgrades with significant return on minimal financial investment. It highlights OGE's new state-of-the-art learning management system as the #1 training upgrade among commissions. A copy of the CLC Ethics Commission report was placed in the Dropbox for your review, and a press release was posted on the Bega website. During the discussion, I provided insight on what a learning management system is, the process for procuring a system, and the process for creating training courses. I also provided information on the benefits of having a learning management system, such as the ability to educate large amounts of employees, relieving the burden on office staff, increasing reporting, and offering employees on-demand ethics trainings, which they can utilize at any time from any location. The panel discussion in LMS were well received, and COBO invited us to present on our LMS again at a Subconnect training before the next annual conference. Aside from the panel discussion, some of the standout ethics sessions that staff attended, including how to build confidence in public institutions and programs, gifts galore, tips for navigating ethics issues with big ticket events, deconstructing ethics, where we have been and where we're going, when everyone knows everybody, managing influence risk at the local level, lobbying update, U.S. and Canadian, federal, state, provincial, and local lobbying laws, catch and release, a discussion on early interventions and compliance efforts, and ethics update. In addition to COBO, attorney advisor Fran Van attended the following training courses offered by the DC Office of the Attorney General: Finding the Law of the District of Columbia, Cross-Examination Skills, Direct Examination, and Closing Arguments. Program coordinator Stan Kosick attended Problem Solving, Generating Solutions, and Innovation and Creativity. For trainings conducted by staff, since the November board meeting, OGE conducted 6 training courses, which included the November and December monthly ethics trainings, the November Ethics Counselor Brown Bag session, 2 ethics trainings for the District Department of Transportation, and a joint training with OOG for the Department on Disability Services. On Monday, December 27th, Supervisory Attorney Asia Stewart Mitchell presented the November Ethics Counselor Brown Bag session on gifts. 34 ethics counselors were in attendance and engaged in our discussion about holidays and the ethics rules surrounding gifts and holiday parties. A copy of the presentation was placed in the Dropbox. During the month of November, 23 employees completed our online ethics training via PeopleSoft, and 11 users completed courses using the learning management system. The most completed training this month using the LMS was the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Ethics Training, BGA 923. For outreach, on November 8th, Senior Board Attorney Lynn Tran and General Counsel Rashi Raj met with members of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia Fraud, Public Corruption, and Civil Rights Section, as well as the D.C. Superior Court Division's Major Crimes Section. The purpose of the meeting was to establish a working relationship between our offices and to provide coordination and referral of cases. Since that time, we have continued to remain in contact and have better access to information on criminal cases that have been stayed in our office for long periods of time. We were also able to learn more about their case processes. On that same day, General Counsel Raj also met with Assistant Chief of Police Jeffrey W. Carroll and Commander John R. Knudsen of the Metropolitan Police Department's Internal Affairs Division for the same purpose of establishing a working relationship. They were sad that we moved out of the Marion Berry building, but were encouraged to have new points of contact and open lines of communication. On November 16th, General Counsel Raj and Supervisory Attorney Asia Stewart Mitchell met with the DC Office of the Inspector General's investigators to discuss interagency partnership and what both agencies can do to enhance our relationship. DC OIG has many new investigators, and they were interested to learn more about our agency, our mission, and how we can possibly work together. Overall, November was a good month for building relationships and partnerships around the district. Lastly, Bega held its annual Ethics Week from October 23rd through the 27th, 2023. And the theme was Everyday Ethics, hashtag can't go a day without it. The presentations and sessions are now available on Bega's YouTube page and the website. Next is an update on Bega newsletter. On Friday, December 15th, which is tomorrow, OGE will publish Volume 8, Issue 6 of its newsletter, Ethically Speaking. The newsletter will inform readers of recent enforcement actions taken by this agency and other federal, state, and local ethics boards, ethics advisory opinions, and notable activities within Bega and within the last quarter. This issue will be available on the Bega website. The next issue will be published in February 2024. Next is an update on advisory opinions and advice. First, informal advice. OGE's legal staff provided advice for approximately 42 ethics inquiries, which is 24 more than the 18 reported at the last board meeting. This number does not include responses we have provided to questions regarding the lobbyist and FDS e-filing systems. For formal advisory opinions, OGE is in the process of drafting an advisory opinion that addresses the obligations surrounding cooperation with ethics investigations and a prohibition on retaliation. Also in the works is an advisory opinion on the use of social media accounts opposed to personal accounts. 2023 Annual Best Practices Report. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.02B, Bega is drafting its Annual Best Practices Report, which will be transmitted to the mayor and each member of the council by December 31st. The report will highlight the functional achievements of both OOG and OGE from fiscal year 2023 until December of this fiscal year. It would also include recommendations for actions that will strengthen the district's ethics rules and transparency laws, thereby strengthening the district's public integrity. Next is an update on legislation and rulemaking. First, financial disclosure rulemaking. OGE is in the process of identifying boards and commissions that do not meet the definition of public official under DC Official Code Section 1-1162.0147 for purposes of financial disclosure, but that engage in duties that include advising and or awarding of government funding through grants or contracts. Pursuant to Section 1-1162.24A of the Ethics Act, public officials, except advisory neighborhood commissioners and candidates for election to public office who are not otherwise required to file pursuant to this paragraph, shall file with the Board of Ethics a public financial disclosure statement. The definition of a public official includes any additional employee designated by rule by the Ethics Board, by the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, who makes decisions or participates substantially in the area of contracting, procurement, administration of grants or subsidies, developing policies, land use planning, inspecting, licensing, regulating, or auditing, or acts in areas of responsibilities that may create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. OGE is in the process of drafting a rulemaking that would designate those boards and commissions that should publicly file financial disclosure statements because their official duties create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. OGE believes that these boards meet the definition of a public official. Next is Comprehensive Code of Conduct. The Comprehensive Code of Conduct, CCC, is legislation that consolidates the district's ethics laws and standardizes the ethical practices between the legislative and executive branches. OGE's legal team will again review and update the CCC with the goal of submitting an updated version of the legislation to the board and then the council. Next is the Lobbyist Registration Fee and Civil Penalty Amendment Act of 2023. As part of the FY 2025 Budget Support Act, OGE has recommended an amendment to the Ethics Act that would increase the lobbying registration fees and fines. Bega's fees and late filing penalty for lobbyists are on the lower end of the spectrum compared to other jurisdictions. In Chicago, Illinois, the registration fee is $350 and $75 per client, and the fine for filing a late registration or activity report is $1,000 per day and suspension of the lobbyist registration. In addition, Chicago's law provides that a person who employs a lobbyist but who fails to register may be subject to a fine of up to $20,000. The Maryland State Ethics Commission has the authority to impose a fine of up to $5,000 for late registration and reporting. The Kentucky Ethics Commission requires legislative lobbyists to pay a registration fee of $250 and executive lobbyists to pay a registration fee of $500. And the penalty for filing a late registration or failing to renew a registration is $100 per day up to $1,000. The Georgia State Ethics Commission may assess a fee of $275 for each late activity report, with an additional late fee of $1,000 on the 7th or 15th day that the report is late, increasing to a late fee of $10,000. There are several other state ethics commissions that impose higher penalties than Bega for late filing. Therefore, OGE is proposing to increase the district's lobbyist registration fee and penalty to an amount that is consistent with other jurisdictions and will deter non-compliance with our laws. The amendment will increase the registration fee from $250 to $350 for for-profit entities, and from $50 to $100 for nonprofit entities, and will increase the late filing fee from $300 to $100 per day up to $5,000. A copy of the proposed amendment was placed in the Dropbox for your review. Next is an update on OG administrative matters. First, the FY25 budget. On November 20th, Director Allen, Chief of Staff Mitchell, and I presented the agency's FY 2025 budget submission to the City Administrator's Office. The submission included enhancement requests to increase the non-personal services fund, funding to hire 2 auditors, and funding to hire an attorney for OOG. As I previously mentioned, the OGE also submitted a Budget Support Act request to include an amendment to the lobbyist section of the Ethics Act. For office relocation, our office relocation is complete and the space is available for occupancy. This week we received our certificate of occupancy and staff have been able to enjoy the new space. We will continue our weekly meetings with the Department of General Services and the project management team to discuss final items. We are truly excited to have an office space that is suitable for the entire agency. Next is financial disclosure statement, FDS. Pursuant to DC Official Code Sections 1-1162.24 and 1-1162.25, public officials and certain government employees must file a financial disclosure statement as a means of transparency and to prevent engaging in conduct that violates the Financial Conflicts of Interest statute. Bega is responsible for ensuring that employees and public officials who meet the statutory requirement file their annual financial disclosure statement. The FDS team has identified designated filers who have not filed or were late in filing their FDS statements. A list of the late filers was sent to the Office of Pay and Retirement Services for wage garnishment, and the former employees were sent notice to pay their fine using our online payment portal. OPRS continues to work with OGE FDS team for the processing of 2023 enforcement matters. Attorney Advisor Van and Program Specialist Kosick sent notices to the 13 council members and their chiefs of staff, reminding them of their November filing obligation. To date, all council members have filed their financial disclosure statements. Auditor Courtney Walker finished the calendar year 2022 confidential FDS audit and will discuss her results with the team. She is currently working on an audit of council member filings for November 2022, May 2023, and November 2023. Next is an update on lobbying registration and reporting, LRR. Pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.27A, a person who receives compensation or expends funds in an amount of $250 or more in any 3 consecutive calendar month period for lobbying shall register with the Director of Government Ethics and pay the required registration fee. According to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.30, each registrant shall file a quarterly report concerning the registrant's lobbying activity during the previous quarter. According to the LRR team, lobbyist reporting remained steady in November 2023. As a result of the enhancements, it is apparent that some entities were filing activity reports without having completed their 2023 registration. 12 registrants failed to timely file their 2023 renewal. The LRR team identified the entities and sent fine notices to these registrants, and in response, 7 have paid their fines. Last is an update on public investigations. 23-0006F, Henry David DeBoer. This is a formal investigation based on the complaint filed by the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC, and referred by the Office of the Inspector General. According to the complaint, David DeBoer, respondent and former IT specialist with the Department of Employment Services, provided IT services to CJCC through a vendor, Enlighten, during his government tour of duty. During this time, respondent submitted timesheets to DOES, which reflected his normal district government tour of duty from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Respondent's alleged conduct violates DPM Section 1807.1, which prohibits employees from using government time or resources for other than official business or government-approved or sponsored activities. Respondent also failed to report Enlightenment on his 2022 financial disclosure statement and failed to file a 2023 statement. An evidentiary hearing is scheduled to take place on January 11, 2024 at 2 p.m. at the new Bega office. Thank you. This concludes the Office of Government Ethics December 14, 2023 report. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Cooks. Are there any questions for Director Cooks? Any comments? I would like to comment on the Ethics Week. I was able to attend many of the sessions, not as many as I would have liked, but I thought they were very thorough and informative.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the next item on our agenda is public comments. The public was invited to submit comments in writing by 11 a.m. today, and no comments have been received by 11 a.m. The next item then is executive or closed sessions. This is to enter into closed session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B14, to consult an attorney to obtain legal advice and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and a public body pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B4A, to discuss personnel matters including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or officials pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B10, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B13, and to discuss contract negotiation strategies pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B2. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the board enter into executive session. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, it is now 12:59 p.m. and we will close out of this session and enter executive session. We will return to this session at the conclusion of the executive session to report out any matters decided, finish any other business, and adjourn the meeting. Okay, thank you. Okay. I think we're all back. The time is now 1:56 p.m. and there is one item to report out. In the matter of 19-0010-F, in Ray Don Dorsey, the board reports out that the board agreed to dismiss this matter and to make it public, to make the dismissal public. Our next meeting will take place on January 11th, 2024 at noon at 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700. And I wish everyone a happy holiday. This concludes our meeting for the month of December. Thank you, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank
Yes.
you. Happy holidays.
Okay, be safe.